Good morning, Journalism 1 students. I'm sorry that I can't be here today, but I am providing a lesson via video so you guys can complete the anatomy of spread and can understand it. Um, there are Journalism 2 and 3 students in the class that can help you with this. This is something that they have done last year and they should be familiar with this. So if you have any questions, please go to them first. And of course, you can always email me, but you should be able to go step by step through this presentation. So we're going to be reviewing yearbook design principles. Remember, we talked about them last class when we're talking about harmony, contrast, as well as the other principles, as well as typography. We're going to be putting all that stuff together and how we lay out a yearbook spread. So, and most people, when they're doing a yearbook spread or any kind of design for anything, they actually sketch it out on paper with pencil. And so that's what you're going to be doing today. You're going to be taking notes with a sketch pad that's going to be provided for you, as well as make sure that you have a pencil. There are some pencils at the front of the room, so if you need a pencil, you can grab one, but please remember to leave them there because we will need them for other blocks because you block 1 and block 2 are going to be doing the same assignment, and I won't be able to provide pencils again for the day. So you'll be getting something that looks like this from the substitute. This is the yearbook sketch layout that you're going to be doing, and it needs to be done exactly as you see it. So don't try to make it go vertically. It needs to be horizontal. If you look at this, this is the left side of the page and this is the right side of the page. You're going to be getting a half sheet just because I want to save on paper, but you don't really need a full page in order to take notes on. Please don't lose this because you will be quizzed on the information that you are going to be doing today next week. So this is what we're going to be hopefully going towards. This is a yearbook spread that's been finished, and it uses the design principles as well as what we're going to be going through today to make an attractive spread. So what you're going to be needing today is you'll need a pencil with an eraser. So if you don't have one, please get one from the front of the room. Again, please leave all pencils in the room so other students can use it. You'll need the handout, which the sub will give you, which is exactly what you see here. Make sure that you're using it in a horizontal. It has 18 columns in it, and we'll be using that throughout this lesson. You may want to have a straight edge, like a ruler or a piece of paper. I do not have rulers to give you. You do not have to be perfect and have a straight edge, but if it's something you like to do, then a folded piece of paper would work just as fine, as well as the edge of a notebook or something like that. So let's get started. So you are looking at the sketch pad that you have right here, and if you see going across it, it actually has 24 areas in it. So in these areas, this is where we put all of our pictures, our narrative, everything for the yearbook. So the gutter is actually in the center of the yearbook, and that is where the pages are glued or sewed together. So any book that you open up, if you look at the center, it always has something we call the gutter, and it's just some white space where pages come together. In a yearbook, each of the columns, as you see here, this would be one column. Each column is 1 pica or 1/6 of an inch. That's important to know because many of you think that these little individual 24 things are columns, but they're not. It's actually 2 of these squares makes a whole column for the yearbook. So how you would write these notes on your sketch pad that you've been given is you could simply write here gutter, and if you need to add more like where pages are joined together, you can do that. And then also you need to know here that 1 pica is 1 column and it equals 1/6 of an inch. So don't fill the page With your notes, make them as small as possible, but still good for what you needed to, because there's a lot more stuff that we're going to be putting on this, and you'll need some room in order to do that. So next up is the first thing that you ever put on a paper or a spread is you put the dominant photo. So, using a straight edge or just using it by hand, place a large rectangle on your layout, and it can be around the gutter and past the gutter like you see, and it doesn't matter if you go exactly how many squares in, just as long as you have a large dominant photo triangle, or not triangle but rectangle there. So you can note that it's 7 it's 7 in, and then it's also 5 and 2 and 4. You can do exactly what it is here, but you don't necessarily have to. So as you see here, here is a dominant photo, and we always indicate dominant photos by this X. So just draw a light X. Dominant photos, it's important to know, that's the very first thing that you place on a page. It should be near but not exactly in the middle of the spread. As you see here, it's kind of more over here onto the left of the spread, so it's not directly in the middle of it. And it should be 2 times larger than any other element. So it should not be taking the entire page, but it should be a good size, and it will take up, it'll be twice as big as any other element on the page. Next up is we are going to draw the eye line. And the eye line is right here, right underneath the dominant photo that you drew earlier. And it allows the dominant photo to guide the placement of the eye line that runs horizontally across the page. So it doesn't have to be in the exact center. Since all it is doing, it is dividing the page up, and this is, we call it the eye line because this is where your eyes go to when you first hit the page, and then it moves up or down depending on what elements that you have on the page. So the eye line, what it's actually doing is creating a unity between 2 separate pages. So if you have a sports page, in order to have the football sports spread go together on 2 different pages, you place this eye line in here to say the left side has something to do with the right side. So that's the reason why we use the eye line in the picture. So make sure you're drawing the eye line, write your notes of what it actually does, as well as you do for the dominant photo. Next up is we're going to add some text. You do not actually have to write any narrative in here, but we're going to add some text here over to the left. And in your notes, what you do is keep a box, but make sure that you have some spacing between your boxes. So the eye line and the dominant photo can touch one another. However, the narrative and the eye line should have a little bit of space, as well as what the narrative and the dominant photo would be. You do not place an X in this box because this is not going to be a photo. This is actually going to be a narrative. So you always design from starting from the middle. So right in the middle here, we started with the large photo, and now we're working outward over to here. So you begin and end each element at the edge of the column. So here's the edge of one column here, and here's the edge of another. We do not overlap into this skinny tight space that you see here. We always stay within. And as you see here, even the dominant photo stays within the columns. So, and these are actually spacings between the columns of it. So next, we're going to add a headline and a subheadline. So your headline goes up here, and it's usually larger than your subheadline, and it may have a different font or color or so forth. But as you see here, it's very defined of what it is, and it looks very different even from here in the narrative. And then we can add some more pictures, as you see here. And we have a difference in pictures. They're definitely smaller than here, and they're interesting in shape and color, and also in what we put into the picture as well. So as you see here, you're looking at the layout as if the pictures aren't there. So the headline goes up here with the subheadline under it, and usually you have some sort of line underneath it, as you see here, but you still see the space right here between it. So the headline and subheadline are still staying within this column that you see here. You see these boxes here which have X's in them, so that means that they are photos. They stay within all of the columns with just the spacing you see left here in between the photos. Now you can add some more text like you see here. And that is where some of the building of the text comes in. So as you saw, we started here, we went over to here, added headline, added some pictures, and now we're going to add some text to the pictures where we can caption the pictures. Next, we can add something interesting up top here because there's a lot of white space up here. So if you look on here, there's a lot of white space here that we need to fill. And we can do that by just adding a quote in a picture as you see up here. So as you see here, now we have the top half above the eye line filled, and it looks like a really good page. However, we still have this white column down here that we're going to need to put something in it to make it an interesting page. So in order to do that, you can do something as simple as a Q&A like they did here in this picture with different colors and also narrative. So make sure that you are drawing the example with the narrative and pictures for every other one for your notes that you have. So, a lot of times we use things like modules, and so a basic layout that can be given as a template can be altered to include more students using modules. So I'm going to show you in the next slides that show how modules can be used in order to change your layout that you just drew. So you just drew this module basically, and now you might want to change it in order to make it more interesting or to adhere to what you want. So as you say here, it looks almost exactly how you had it, except you changed a few things. You still have your narrative here. This is still essentially the dominant photo. However, you made a photo collage of it with different interesting photos, and you also added a narrative. However, the headline, the subheadline, the upper quote with a picture and the multi-pictures as well as the down below Q&A is the same. So you can change how you do things depending on the page as well as to make it more interesting. So I was talking about space when we were drawing in the different narratives and the photos, and then things didn't mesh up against each other. You actually left space. So it's the area around the photos and the text. And it doesn't necessarily have to be white. It just has to be a spacing. It could be black, it could be red, it could be any color. But there should be spacing between the photos and any of the text. So you need to plan for this. If you don't plan for this and everything is kind of jutting up against each other, it becomes confusing and it doesn't really work. So there are three types of white space. There's standard, there's tight, and expanded. And we're going to go over each of these and what they mean. So standard spacing is just your typical spacing. And if you were looking through these modules that we were doing, This here is just standard spacing. It's the one row that we have here throughout all of this. That would be standard spacing. And you see that here, that everything here is standard spacing. Then we have something that we call tight spacing. And the example we see here is over here. You can see the spacing over here is a lot larger than what it is between these photos. And then the other type of spacing we have is expanded spacing, where you see right here in between these photos and this narrative and these photos. So we all use them to make the page flow and make sense, and to separate things into the different topics that we were talking about last class when we were talking about design basics. So let's go over some of the design terms that we use throughout this presentation. And this is the example spread that I showed at the beginning of the slides. So right here we have your secondary headline. It's much smaller than the main headline, which you see here, but it's definitely a lot bigger than what you see for the narratives. This is the dominant photo, and as you see, it's twice as big as the other photos that you see throughout the page. Here we have expanded spacing. It looks definitely bigger than you see in the other spacing throughout. These are cutouts. We don't use these a lot, but these pictures can be cut out. So what you do is you take a normal picture like you see here, and then you cut out the person in there. This is the content module. So you have the picture, and here it goes into the narrative of what's going on for the picture. And here's more content module also with pictures. Here is the eye line of the spread. And then we have captions. Whoops. A quick read is something very quick. It might be a quote, it might be a question and answer session. Here is some standard spacing in between the photos into the narrative. A folio is just simply the page number. In between these photos here as well as here, we see some tight spacing. This is the feature story or the main story on the page. And this is a drop cap where we see that it is beginning the sentence of the word, but it's emphasizing that it's the beginning of it. So I hope that helped with the idea of what a spread is and how to create and use your design ideas for a yearbook spread. The next thing that I'm going to have you do is you are going to go to the Google Classroom, and you are going to open up the assignment called Design Flaws, and you're going to get something that looks just like this. So there are two design pages. They're very similar, so I'm actually asking you just to look at it and tell me, you know, what looks right, what looked. So this one and the first one actually has a lot of flaws, and there's things that need to be changed. There's about 10 differences. You could probably find more, but there's at least 10 differences. So what I want you to do is to look at both of these at the same time and see how this is an improvement over this. So one thing that is very obvious that you can see is that this picture right here doesn't take up the column. And if you remember what I said, that all of the elements, the pictures, the text, should go from column to column. So what you needed to do, as you see here, this person did, they extended the picture so it went to column to column. So down here for number 1, you would say in the left column, you can expand the picture all the way to column on the left. So you can label these as you need to in order to make sense of it. But there are 10 differences in here that you can find in order to improve upon it. So I hope this makes sense and you're able to complete this assignment. Please make sure that you go to any of the Journalism 2 students who have done this before and are familiar with the design basics as well as creating a yearbook spread. You can always email me. I'll be in the auditorium working with seniors, getting their senior formal portraits. I hope you guys have a great afternoon as well as a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.